Hello, this video recording is in lieu of a Skype call with Cranky Philosopher on Twitter. Basically, what I would like to do in this is demonstrate a few aspects of Codex that relate to trait statements, and to get your thoughts on how this compares to your concept of doxographical ontologies, and if there's anything that I might be able to do to enrich this model in Codex. So without going into everything behind Codex, the basic premise is that plain text is annotated with standoff properties. Standoff properties are stored as nodes in a graph database, and we have a special kind of text editor which allows you to change the text substrate without damaging the standoff properties themselves. And around this concept are a bunch of other interfaces for managing relationships in the graph model. Now, one of the core data structures in Codex is something I call the statement model. The statement model allows you to relate one or any number of entities around a concept node. A concept node, by this I don't mean necessarily a concept as an idea, but it's essentially a tag or a label that could potentially exist in a hierarchy. So an example would be we have the King of France here. Well, you could have a concept referring to a king, and in a standard system, the King of France would be he might have the type of being a king, and we could see how that type relates to other types. In Codex, I tackle this a little bit differently. So rather than just having a sort of taxonomy of classifications, I instead work at the level of the trait. You could call it an attribute or even a quality. So while a king would be a trait in the system and essentially a type, adjectives like unfortunate or unconscientious or not God-fearing or sinful could be considered traits of entities as well. And the statement model I originally developed this, and it's similar to a factoid model where you can relate, one or more, two or more entities according to an action. In this case, you're applying a trait to a single entity, but the other entity in the statement would be the textual witness. So this text comes from the diary of Luca Landucci. So as a statement, we are saying here that Landucci says that the Venetians have the trait of being unfortunate. They are unconscientious, not God-fearing, and sinful, and so on. My approach has been that while type information is crucial, there's a whole dimension of qualitative information, or opinions, classifications, evaluations, which tend to fall out of digital editions, because I think in some respect they're not considered objective. Certainly many of these are Landucci's opinions, but the opinions of Landucci are a subject of interest themselves, because they give you a point of view of a typical Florentine citizen to people and events of his time. So if we were, say, to look at the Venetians in this system, simply by going to the Statements tab, we can see the annotation of all the traits that they have in Landucci's texts, and we can see at a glance how he characterized them. And we can then also go to the statement screen and look at it from the point of view of the trait. So one of those traits was the term unfortunate, so we could find every entity who has the trait of being unfortunate. And we can see here that doesn't just apply to people as such, it applies to sort of regions, institutions, and so on. One of my intentions is to start to build hierarchies on top of these traits so that one could ultimately go up a ladder of abstraction and say, well, to be unfortunate would be maybe considered negative, there are other traits considered positive. We could then ask questions of the graph and say, find me all texts and all sentences where there are entities that Landucci has described with negative or positive traits, for example. Now, how I imagine this working would be if we look, for example, at the sentences tab on the entity screen for the Venetians, we can see here the search results show us sentence snippets from references to the Venetians wherever they occur in the text. So we got two sentences here in this diary entry, and because we're dealing with annotations rather than the static text, we'll find anything that's been annotated that refers to the Venetians, including the pronouns. Now, something similar to this, but using the graph in a more sophisticated way, perhaps, is to do a match on relationships between the Venetians and other entities. So here we're looking at the containment relationship, so something that the Venetians are a part of, contained by, and we can see here that the Venetians were part of a league of Italian states, the Milanese, the German emperor, and so on. And so this search will return a sentence where Venetians and anyone that they have a containment relationship with is found. And I imagine something similar could be done with traits as well. So we could say find sentences where the Venetians and a particular trait of theirs is present, or other entities which share that trait. This is basically all I wanted to show on this occasion. My main point again is that I'm using what I call the statement model. So while I normally use that to structure events, multi-party events, it can also be used to record classifications of entities which we can trace back to a witness, and we can trace back as well to the textual occurrence. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, whether this was any way similar to what you had in mind with your doxographical ontology paper, or if you have any suggestions how I could take this further. I would love to hear from you. Thank you.